So I'm here today to tell a fairy tale that I have found on either the internet, read in a book, or heard from someone else. Now I've decided that I should start telling fairy tales that I found, or that I remember from my childhood, and I should put them on the internet for people to either enjoy, or to laugh at. I don't know. Anyway, so today's fairy tale that I'll be telling is known as The King of the Golden Mountain. I hope you enjoy. Anyway, so once upon a time there lived a merchant, and this merchant was very successful. He was very wealthy, and often his ships would bring back much profit. Well, unfortunately, tragedy struck once. He just met some bad luck, and 2 ships that he sent out ended up at the bottom of the sea. Now, this merchant had one son who he really wanted to provide for, and he was very worried when he found out that his ships were gone and that he was broke. Because he invested all his life into his life savings into these 2 ships. Well, so now all he had was this little house and this little bit of property that he would sometimes walk on to try and forget everything that was going on. Now, one day he's taking a walk, and this little man just pops out of nowhere. And he says, "Hey man, you look a little down. Is there anything that you might want to talk about? Maybe I can help you with something." And the merchant says, No. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to burden you with what's going on. But the little man is pushing him, saying, No, you should tell me what's going on. And eventually the merchant just tells him everything that's going on and what's bothering him. And the little man says, "Don't worry about that. Listen, let's make a deal. The first thing that meets you at your door tonight is the first thing that you will bring to me 12 years from now. If you do that, actually even before you do that, if you can promise me that, then I will get you back into the merchant business. I will get you going again." Well, the merchant really isn't thinking much about this, because maybe it's going to be just his cat that meets him at the door, or his dog. And so he's like, yeah, sure, that actually sounds like not that bad a deal. Well, it turns out the first thing that meets him at the door that night is his son. And this son is 1, maybe 2 years old. So the first thing that that merchant thinks when he gets home is missed. That's not good. So now he just promised his son to a stranger. So for a little while there doesn't seem to be any gold or anything. So he's like, yeah, well, maybe this guy was joking. Maybe it's just a prank. Well, about a month later, he goes up to the attic, and he discovers a pile of gold lying on the floor. And he's not thinking so much, oh man, dang it, that guy was serious, now I have to give up my son. The merchant is just thinking, yes, I can get back into the merchant business, and I can make all my money again, and I can become a rich man again. So 12 years passes, it's pretty successful, but now he does actually have to give up his son. And unfortunately this guilt is kind of becoming apparent on his face, and his son one day asks, "Hey Dad, what seems to be bothering you? You look a little down lately." And his father says, "Son, 12 years ago, I made a deal with this strange guy who just appeared out of nowhere, and he promised me gold if I promised to bring him the first thing that met me at the door that night. That thing was you." And the little boy, who is 12 or 14 maybe, says, "Oh, don't worry about that, Dad. I'm gonna go with you to this meeting, and I'm gonna give this stranger a piece of my mind. He's not gonna take me." This kid's really spunky or really dumb. And somehow the father agrees to this. So he brings his son to the prearranged location, and the little man appears. And he says, "Hey, merchant, did you bring me what I asked for?" "Well, yes, he did. So, unfortunately, this kid is really spunky, and he gives the stranger a piece of his mind, and says, 'Hey, let my dad out of this deal. You can't take me. Um, but the little man just laughs and says, "Yeah, I can. He promised me. I'm not gonna let him out of this deal." Well, the son, there's this whole argument about what's going to happen now because, well, it's 2 against 1 now. So what's eventually decided upon is that this little boy is going to be set out into the water in a small boat, and whatever happens to him happens to him. So his father, the merchant father, pushes his son out in a boat, and unfortunately, it looks like the boat tips over. But in fact, and so the merchant is concerned that his son is dead, but in fact, the son is very much alive. He ends up on a distant shore, and after a little bit of exploring, what he finds is that there is this abandoned castle. And as he's exploring this castle, the only thing that this kid can find is this massive white snake, who is in fact an enchanted princess, or maybe a cursed princess. But I really hope he doesn't have a fear of snakes, because this snake says, "Oh my gosh, are you my savior? You probably are, because you're here. So listen, there are going to be these guys that come tonight, and they're going to beat you up, and they're going to be really scary, and they're just going to torture you. And then the next night, even more guys are going to come, and they're going to do the same thing, and it's going to be even worse. And on the third night, you're probably going to get your head chopped off. But if you can not make a sound while they're torturing you for 3 nights, even after they kill you, I will reanimate you with the water of life, and we can get married, and this kingdom can be yours." Wow. So this kid agrees to this, and somehow he's strong enough not to utter a sound while these guys are torturing him, his frail little body. And he's even okay with getting his head chopped off, because it's all for getting a kingdom. And the princess is actually serious. She does come to him with the water of life, and she reanimates him, and they get married. And they have a kid, and it's awesome, and this guy, they rule for 8 years. Now, eventually, the king is thinking, I really want to go back home and visit my folks. So he's trying to get her to give him a way home, and she says, no, I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to leave. If you do, something bad could really happen. But eventually, he convinces her to let him go, and so she gives him this magic ring, that's wishing ring, and she says, "Listen, there's one thing that I don't want you to do, and that's wish me there with you at your parents' house. I just don't want to meet your in-laws. I'm sorry." Or there's some other reason that she gives him, and she says, "Just don't do it. If you do, something bad is going to happen." So he promises, "No, I won't wish you there." So he wishes himself home, and has a little bit of trouble at the gate that ends up being that he has to give his clothes off to a shepherd, or he switches clothes with a shepherd so that he can actually get into town. Well, when he does get into town, he finds his father, and he approaches him, but his father says, "Who the heck are you?" Because he's wearing shepherd's clothing, he is so confused. He doesn't know that he's his son, and it actually takes the son probably taking his shirt off in public and showing him this little birthmark that he has under his arm to prove, "Oh, yes, I am your son." And so it's a happy family reunion! Woohoo! There's a big party, and eventually his father asks, "So, what do you do now?" Well, and the son says, "Well, I'm a king. I rule this golden kingdom, Golden Mountain. It's far away from here, but I am a king." Well, his father is in disbelief, because he's wearing shepherd's clothing, and no king would ever wear shepherd's clothing, unless you're in disguise. And so the son is mad, he wants to prove himself, and so he wishes upon the ring, and says, "I wish that my wife was here, along with my child." So that happens, and the wife's not happy. She starts sobbing and crying, and he's trying to console her, but there's nothing he can do. So she's starting to plot her revenge. She wants to get back to the Golden Mountain, and she's trying to figure out how to dump him now because he betrayed her. So eventually it ends up that one night he falls asleep, and she takes the ring and wishes herself and her child back to the palace. Well, he wakes up, finds his princess gone, as well as the ring gone, and he's like, well, I still want to go back to the Golden Mountain. I don't want to stay here with my parents anymore. So I'm just going to walk on until I find my palace, my kingdom again. Now he does walk on, he leaves his parents, and eventually in his adventures, he comes across three giant brothers. They are trying to divide their inheritance, but they're having some difficulty. So they're like, "Hey, human, come here. You're a lot smarter than us. You're probably a lot wiser than us. So can you divide our inheritance between us?" And the inheritance consists of boots that can take you anywhere you want, a magic sword that will cut off the heads of all your enemies at a word, and a magic cloak that will disguise you or make you invisible. So he's like, okay, let me try this one first. He promises not to cut off their heads, and he doesn't. But he eventually gets them all in his possession. He tests them out, tests all the items out, and he says, "I wish I was back at the at Golden Mountain." So he wishes himself back to the kingdom gates, and he's upset to find that the princess is having a wedding feast to a new guy. So he goes into the wedding feast in his invisible cloak, and he's kind of torturing her and annoying her because he's taking all the food off of her plate and drinking any wine or food that she's being offered. And she's not having fun at her own wedding. She's not being able to eat anything. And she's like, man, why is this still happening to me? That guy broke the curse so long ago. And so when he says this, he rips off the cloak and says, "That's right, you traitress! I broke you from your curse. And how dare you betray me by marrying someone else? I am your savior, not not this imposter." And so there's this whole big thing in the courtroom now, in the palace now. All his subjects are there, but no one's listening to him because he's trying to tell them all to go home and get out. The party's over. But they're like, "No, you're not our king. We don't need to listen to you." And he says, "Oh, really?" So he rips out his magic sword and says, "Heads off!" And just like that, he might be a king. He might have gotten his kingdom back, but now he doesn't have a kingdom. He's all alone, just like the princess was at the beginning of the story. And maybe that's a curse of power. Maybe when you have power and wealth, there are some things that will be taken away from you, and some things that you will, unfortunately, just give away. I don't know, though. I guess it's something to ponder. But yeah, what would you do for power or wealth? There are cases that I've heard where people give up their sons and their kids to try and make it better. But man, I don't know. If there are any other lessons that you think might be able to be learned from this story, please let me know in the comments. Also, if there are any stories that you've heard that might not necessarily be from German culture, if there are any stories from, I don't know, Italy or France, and that you think that I could share, please let me know. I'd love to hear them. Anyway, I hope you have a good day, have a good night, wherever you are. Bye!